Thank you, Gabriel, and thank you all for joining this webinar. So first of all, when Gabriel first invited me to give like a topic for this event, I first thought about like many topics that I can be sharing with, but I think the main one is what I've been doing for the past 6 or 7 years, that is actually international B2B businesses. So just a little bit about myself. I am the CEO and co-founder of Necodex. I've been doing international trade services since 2018. So in 2018, I created Necodex LLC, that is, as Gabriel said, a nearshoring company that is based in Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm also the general director of OHB Tecnología, that is like a legal entity that we have in Mexico. So what we provide is team extension, back office, software development, and app development services. So I've been doing this again since 2018. So I kind of went through all the process that you need to go to being able to sell international services. So first of all, we can go all over what are we doing right now. We are close to 70 people here in Hermosillo. We have our clients in Arizona, Utah, California, Oregon, and recently we closed our first client in Canada that is based in Toronto, and we have another client in Florida. So that's just like a quick recap of what we do as Necodex. So international services, Mexico and USA, that's where we have our main expertise. So we have to understand the first potential that we have about doing businesses around Mexico and US trade. So several key insights that we have is the US is Mexico's largest trading partner. Mexico ranks as the USA third largest trading partner, and we are the first main trading partner for Arizona. So in 2022, for example, we had a total of $8.7 billion that grew 7% from 2021. And 32% of all Arizona exports were designated for Mexican markets. So that gives you a really like broad understanding of the market share that we have as Mexicans or as Mexico in Arizona economy. Obviously, our sister state, that is Sonora, we are just crossing the border. We have the Garita in Nogales, where we can cross, depending on the day, something between waiting lines of 5 minutes or 2 hours, depending of the day. So we also have a direct flight between Phoenix and Hermosillo that is just 1 hour flight. And one thing that not a lot of people know is that Hermosillo and Phoenix are sister cities. So we have a political and legal figure that can benefit doing international businesses. Obviously, we are in the East Valley Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, so cultural affinity is something important. Mexico is Spanish speakers, and Phoenix and all the metro area in Phoenix have a lot of Hispanics and Spanish speakers. And in Mexico, we have 4 different time zones, but Arizona and Sonora are in the same time zone, so that's something good. And some of the things that we have as market potential is that Mexico is considered to be the 15th largest economy in the world. So it's a really big market that we have right now, and it's continuously growing. Recently, Forbes created an article and published an article about that we are in the golden area, in the golden stage of Mexico because of the nearshoring model. We have seen several examples as Tesla creating their manufacturing facility in Monterrey, or TSMC is also trying to do some things about semiconductors, some processes about assembling semiconductors here in Sonora also. And obviously, one thing to consider is that the currency exchange that we currently have. So $1 US is something around 17 Mexican pesos. Some key considerations that we have when you are doing international B2B businesses. Obviously, my main expertise is around services. So any questions you have This is like an open conversation. Just feel free to post any questions in the chat, and I'll try to address it. So again, some key considerations that we have for international businesses, obviously doing a market research. When we first started with Necodex, we saw the advantage that we have on technology for creating technology from Mexico. So that's where we started doing our market research. Obviously, creating your business objectives to define clear and achievable objectives. That's something that you will need to do. Identifying business partners. So one quick example about this is the way that we have been working with Gabriel, Somos, and all the companies that we have partnerships with in the US. It's obviously good when you are doing B2B businesses to have this kind of partners, because you will have to understand the legal structure or the compliance that you will have to follow from one country to another. So always having someone who already went through that is good for that. Obviously, cultural nuances. Again, we are in the Hispanic market of commerce, Chamber of Commerce. So with that, we have really cultural affinity with the Mexican market, a really good comprehensive business plan, and we have to be really aware of legal and regulatory compliance that we'll need to follow. And obviously, patience and persistence is something that we will need to have to create a business internationally. Just as an example, as legal and regulatory framework that we have here in Mexico, I kind of went through this photo. So here in Mexico, this is something pretty much new from 3-4 years to now, that now all candies and sugar and high in calorie food, they need to have this kind of symbols so people can see that they are consuming really sugary or fat food. So this is something that is not in the US. So for example, if you are trying to export any food product from the US to Mexico, you will have to go through that. And obviously having the NAFTA is something that is beneficial to the international business, specifically between Mexico and the US. There are several products and several services that has benefits. For example, if you're trying to sell services from Mexico to the US, there's no tax involved. So there's a VAT 0%. So there's no taxes to be paid between the US and Mexico. But if you're selling a product, it depends on the product, the tax that you're going to pay. So you will have to be really aware of that. About intellectual property protection, US and Mexico have different kind of procedures. For example, in the US, you can patent software, but here in Mexico, you can't patent software. So you need to be aware of what is the IP protection that you will have to go to be able to sell or import products or services from one country to another. Obviously, having contractual agreements between US and Mexico for all the labor laws or specific things that you'll need to go through, like international patterns, conditions, payments, whatever you want to go. Again, going through taxation consideration, and obviously compliance and reporting. For example, if you're trying to create a Mexican entity, we have to report taxes monthly here in Mexico, and in the US you have to report them. Annually. So Gabriel asked, how can a small business learn about the legalities to doing business international, and how did you figure out these details? How did I figure it out? Through a lot of errors. So, for example, when we first started selling services, we didn't knew that you could sell services with 0% VAT. So that's something that we have as an advantage here in Mexico. And as a small business trying to learn about the legalities, it depends if you are trying to create a branch of your business in Mexico or not, or if you're just trying to sell your product or service. If you are just trying to sell your product or service, there are several platforms, for example, marketplaces or any e-commerce platform at Shopify that they already take care of that for you. So I will definitely need to learn more about, know more about the specifics of the business to figure that out. Well, going through choosing the right business model, if you are based in the US or based in Mexico, you will have to ask yourself if you're exporting or importing goods or services from one country or another. Again, from my experience, and because I have company in both countries, trading services is pretty much really straightforward, but there are several legal and compliance things that we need to go through. For example, when we make international wire transfers, there are international fees. You have to report that those movements or wires to the IRS and to the Mexican IRS, that is the SAT. So you have to be also really, really aware of that. Again, you can just go ahead and join ventures. For example, if you are selling a product or service and you find a company that is doing more or less the same in Mexico or in the US, you can try to join ventures or trying to create a partnership to sell services or products through them, so they can take care of all the legal and all the taxes and everything. And you just have to manage one vendor or one partner. Obviously, licensing and franchising. From our side, and again, just following the example of Necodex, the brand of Necodex is registered in both, and it's trademarked in both countries. So trademark is something that you also need to be really aware of. It needs to be done in each country that you want to use the brand. So in Mexico, you can go ahead and do it by yourself in the INPI, that is the Mexican Intellectual Property Institution. So you can go ahead and do it online, and it's gonna charge you like $150 or $200 to do it. And in the US, you can, again, do it yourself. There's a website for Arizona trademarks, and you can go through the process for state use of the brands for around $50 or $20, something around that. Another example of how to choose the business model is we can use just an e-commerce platform or a marketplace that is selling internationally. One of those examples are using Amazon or Mercado Libre or eBay just to be selling products internationally. One really important thing to be really aware of, and something that I'm almost checking daily, is obviously the currency exchange between dollar and peso. From last year to today, we've lost, or well, depending on which side of the currency exchange you are, but $1 1 year ago was about 21 pesos, but right now it's close to 17 pesos. So depending if you are importing or exporting products or services from one country or another, you need to really take care of or have the currency exchange of something that you need to be taking care of. Obviously, having letters of credit to being able to sell or buy products internationally is something you need to take care of. Trade financial programs and payment terms, it changes from one country to another. Going through that again, one first step that you can do if you want to start selling products or services, specifically for products, for example, you can use these kind of platforms like Amazon, Mercado Libre, eBay, Shopify. If you're trying to buy or sell services, there are like freelancer platforms or specific platforms that are specialized on those kind of services. One of those is, for example, freelance.com or Upworks, or one of those companies who are like doing international trade services. So what you have to be really taking care of once you're trying to go through these processes, e-commerce expansion, obviously having the website to be translated for both Spanish and English speakers. It's something that you need to really take care of. Specifically, if you are trying to sell like B2C services or products, if you're trying to sell B2B products or services, it also helps to have your website both in Spanish and English, because you never know who's gonna be the buyer in the other side. If you are based in Mexico, you need to have your website translated. If you are in the US, also you have to have your website translated to Spanish. Website localization, there are several things that you can do in order to have presence in both markets. Again, using Necodex example, we have registered 2 locations, both in Phoenix and Hermosillo. So when people are trying to search for us, depending on the country that they are, or depending on the location that they are looking for, they can find our office in Hermosillo or office in Phoenix. And also they're gonna receive, or they're gonna be showing certain information that is targeted specifically for one country or another. SEO optimization is for you to create strategies to improve your online visibility and rankings, depending on the organic search and traffic that you have in the US or in Mexico. And obviously using digital advertising, and Gabriel is the expert in this, you can target with specific campaigns, demographics from both your markets that are in the US and in Mexico. Are we good in this, or do you have any questions you want to go through? No, we're good. Okay. So one, and again, I'm using Necodex as the business case that I'm describing today. When we first started our company, we first started it in Mexico. So we started selling services through 2 companies who wanted to do software development here. And we made the market research and found out that marketing and software development services in the US are really expensive because of the difference in salaries that can go. So for example, a software developer can earn around $100,000 in the US, and the medium salary in Mexico for something similar in experience and tech stack is around $2,000 or $3,000 per month. So it really depends on the years of experience, but we found that there's a difference between the price that can be sold in the US and the price that you will have to be paying in Mexico. So that's where we started offering the service to create apps and custom or tailor-made systems. So we started doing that back in 2018. And the way that we started doing that is I started traveling back and forth between Hermosillo and Mexico a lot. So I started going to international trade fairs like the Arizona-Mexico Commission or the Arizona-Sonora Commission. And actually one of those fairs is where Gabriel and I first met. So we were like trying to find a way to collaborate together, and he asked me if we were able to create like websites from Mexico, and we were like, yeah, why not? And we started working with one small project, and Then, yeah, like fast forwarding to this day, we were like 3 or 4 people back in 2018. We are close to 70 people right now. So it's something that you can scale like really quickly, depending on the services and the experience that you're trying to share between one country and another. One of the things that we're trying to offer to our customers is obviously, our clients, it's obviously scalable services. If they're trying to hire people internationally, we can do it for them. And increased productivity, because we take care of everything regards to admin, taxes, compliance, labor. People and companies can all focus on productivity and their, like say, just operating their business, so they don't have to take care of all the other things that we went through. And obviously, having an improved customer satisfaction is something that we are really looking forward to. This is a picture of one of the biggest teams that we have right now. And in the past, we went through one company that is based in California. They were trying to grow their team. And we found that the Mexican talent and being able to buy services from Mexico was going to be very beneficial for this company. So they grew their team from 0 to 43, 44 people, and then they acquired the contract. So it's something that we've seen in the past that is really growing. Again, Forbes, and there are several newsletter and articles that are coming through that are saying that Mexico is going through their golden stage again, and that we are going to be having a lot of benefits for both the US and Mexico because of nearshoring. So it's something that you can really take care of. And just as a quick recap, again, this is like a quick webinar. Something that you have to do if you're trying to go like really quick and trying to understand if your service can buy or sell products or services both from or Mexico or the US, is understanding your industry. It really depends on the kind of product or service that you're trying to sell or acquire, the compliance, the taxes, and everything that you will have to go through. So understanding your industry that you are, it's something really important. Obviously, if you are trying to incorporate a business in the US or in Mexico, you'll have to go through all the businesses license and through all the process about being compliant with labor law, being compliant with taxes, and all customs, whatever you need to be able to import or export products and services. Intellectual property is something that you need to be really aware of. Intellectual property is something that is being managed really different from one country to another. So again, just a quick example, in Mexico, you can't patent software, and in the US you can. But there are several ways that you can protect your software if you are in Mexico. That is like, for example, copyright. And you can translate that copyright, or you can pass that copyright from one company to another. One question that Frankie Joe is saying, is there any benefit to having dual citizenship with Mexico and doing businesses? Yes, there is. For example, when I try to create my company in the US, I am not a US citizen. So I had to go through the process of having an IT number. And that process is not just costly, but is time consuming. For example, from the day that I start getting my IT number to the day that I got it were like 3 or 4 months. But the thing is, you can have a company in the US and don't have a citizenship, but obviously you are not going to have access to several things. For example, I have been struggling a lot to get credit in the US because the main partner in the company, myself, is a Mexican citizenship. I can't access to a lot of things in the US. And But in advantages, obviously, I can own the company in Mexico, because something that you have to be aware of is that Mexico takes care of their property here. And you can't own a business if you are not having a Mexican entity or a Mexican partnership. So you have to include Mexican citizenship if you are a US company that is trying to incorporate here in Mexico. Like, obviously having dual citizenship is going to have the better of both worlds. And for example, again, labor laws. If I am trying to have like a direct contract or direct employment in the US, I can't. I can have a company, but I can't be an employee of a company. So this is something that you have to be really aware of. And again, going through again for the next steps that you can do to start doing international business, I really encourage you to go to any of the Arizona Mexico Commission, obviously following events or webinars from international chambers as the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce or Global Chamber of Commerce. Again, for example, the Arizona Mexico Commission and Sonora Mexico Commission, they have two main events during the whole year, and one of them is hosted in Mexico, and one of them is hosted in the US. So people can travel back and forth for those events just. Do we have any questions right now?
I would like to ask this question, Arturo. So obviously, you know, the people that are attending this webinar, they can say, well, you know, I have X amount of employees, like 1, 2, 5, 10, maybe. You know, we do have some corporations with the Chamber of Commerce, but at the same time, you know, you yourself, right, going through this experience of, you know, not to the size of employees that you have now, but back then, you know, where it was a team of 10 or whatever. What are some of the things that you will have done different to speed up the growth internationally? Is there something like the top 2 things that you would have done differently in the early stages of trying to do business internationally?
Yes. For example, at the beginning, we were doing a lot of marketing efforts, but we were not having a lot of presence. And when I mean presence is traveling international. So in the past, and give me 1 second because my headphones are gonna die. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I think we can hear you.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Sorry for that. Yeah, so as I was telling, we were using a lot of like digital presence, but we were not traveling a lot. And for B2B business specifically, I think that being in front of people is kind of important. Obviously, if you're trying to sell these kind of services. So maybe doing more international travel at the beginning will be better. Obviously, being in more events, like even just joining this kind of webinars. So you never know who's going to join one webinar or another, and you can start doing international business. Again, for example, where we first met in the Arizona Mexico Commission, when we went to that event, I think we spent all of our budget just for going to that event, and we find you. So it can be risky, yes, but obviously having a physical presence can really help. And the other thing is trying to find the right business model for the specifics of the services that we were providing. For example, we were stuck something in the 10 and 15 like employee range for 1 or 2 years, or maybe up to 3 years. And not just because of the pandemic, but because we were trying to sell services in a way that was not really clear at the beginning. So once we try to specialize and trying to be more clear in what's the need that we're trying to solve, we were having more success on the closing side of sales. Rodolfo asks, how can a business in Phoenix take advantage of its proximity to Mexico? Again, Phoenix and Hermosillo have the particularity that we are both sister cities. So for example, if you're trying to go through the process of just selling or importing or exporting goods or services, you can talk to the economic development facilities that we have in both sides. For example, in Hermosillo, we have the Economía Hermosillo, so you can speak with those people. And in Phoenix, we know Juan Batres, who is in charge of the Economic Development Council. And obviously, the main advantage that we are taking care specifically in Necodex is that we are taking advantage of the salary difference that can go from one country to another. So that's the main thing that we're doing. Obviously, we are trying to do everything so our team members in Mexico can be really happy with everything that we have here. But obviously, it's something that we are like taking advantage of.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Arturo, that maybe a lot of businesses don't know the access that they could have regardless of the city they're based in. You right now you mentioned Juan Batres from the economic development in the city of Phoenix, but just so that everybody knows in the webinar is like there is a economic development department for every city. So if your business is based in Chandler, Mesa, Gilbert, Tempe, Escastel, there's always there should be an economic development department. And if you can find it, nowadays it's as easy as just searching on Google for that and find out the information. And if not, one of the things that I've seen really good from specifically the city of Mesa is the connection they have with local organizations to connect with small businesses. So I think one of the things that sometimes businesses don't think about, especially small businesses, don't think about growing or doing business internationally, is because they don't know if there's an opportunity or not, And so I think a lot of this happens when, like you mentioned earlier, is going to this networking events, or joining some of these webinars and making connections with people that might not even be here, right? Or asking questions to people that, like yourself, right? Like you're not in the same industry as like somebody else, but asking questions, your experience of doing international business, because, sometimes we might think, well, I have a tire shop, how will I do international business? And there can be different answers to that, or I have a yoga studio, how can I do international business to that? But, there might be a lot of opportunities. The more I've been doing connections with Hermosillo, not only with you, but like understanding the synergy between the state of Arizona and the state of Sonora, I have found out there is a lot of customers. They come from Sonora to Arizona, and I have done business with them as customers and as partners, or relationships. Like, from either a business to business perspective or also from consumer, business to consumer perspective. And I think, if you have a small business with a chamber or not, and you haven't really maybe exploring to like really understanding the economy of this state, the city that you're in the sister state that we have in Mexico, you might be missing out, in a lot of potential business. Like a lot of the people we know that work in Hermosillo, they come over to Arizona to experience Phoenix, Flagstaff, Payson, so many other sites, and they stay here, right? Like they consume services, right? And many times they might even search for those in Spanish, because that's their language-based preference. And so I think that's a really good point of connecting with this organization, searching. I would say, reach out to your economic development department of your city where you're based. Even if you have questions, you can reach out to us as the East Valley Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and we can try to find out, how we can help you or put you in contact with the right person, But I think that's a great point to make.
Yes, just another quick example is my brother was selling like products through a lot of different marketplaces, and he found a vendor in the US who is selling like pallets for different kind of products. So he is now buying a lot of pallets from the US and he is importing them to Mexico. So there's way to do business from one side of the border to another. So it's not just that you have to be importing or just exporting, but there are several opportunities from one way to another. And yeah, that's my information. Again, our main expertise is in service trading. We are selling services from Mexico to the US, but obviously we are also consuming services from the US to Mexico. So any questions you have or something that you would like to discuss personally, this is my contact information, my email, and my two phone numbers, actually, the one from the US and the one from Mexico. So if you want to contact me, you can do it.
Awesome. Well, now's the time. If anybody in the
Are you still taking questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the Q&A.
Oh, cool. Right on time. Yeah, I nailed it. So I'm gonna take advantage of the fact that like the context information that you just gave, it's awesome. Thank you so much for that. Like I'm gonna even go and say that you were too honest with the information you gave. Like that was refreshing. And I appreciate that. So there's a question I got on the technological side. I'm gonna take advantage that you already know that Rodolfo's here. Let me see if there's more engineers. So, well, here goes the question. So I'm looking at a lot of businesses, and this is just my perspective, right? Like, I like to snoop around, and as a consultant, well, I get access to many houses. So I've seen that there's like the investment made on the technological side, like for pretty much all of the businesses I've visited, it's very poor. Like it's like they're not, like, from my perspective, they're not making the budget oriented to technological, the technological progress that we're going to see like in the next 5 years. So I'm thinking, as a small business or as a medium-sized business, or as a, you guys have seen it, like big businesses with very poor software infrastructure, or even hardware infrastructure. So is there a technological recommendation you got right now on investment on long-term on IT for businesses that are growing, even if they're small or medium-sized? Does that make sense?
I'm trying to understand the question. So
like let's make an example. Like we've talked about this. Like, let's think of this. I got a recycling business, right? And I got 2 people on IT, and they take care of support. But the software is just like, we all use Excel sheets, and the communication is poor, reporting is slow, like that kind of situation, right? Does that make sense?
yes.
Yeah, what would be your first, and I think this is very familiar for everybody here, like Excel sheets, lane meets, slow lane meets, that could be emails. So what would be your first recommendation on a technological implementation, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, so the first thing that I always say, and maybe it's counter sales. Yeah, because I always say you don't need like a Rolls Royce if you are just like driving no, I don't know, a Tsuru right now. So what I try to say with this is if you are currently using Excel sheets and you're currently using notepads or even just paper, and you're trying to change that like completely 180 degrees to a fully automated system, I see a lot of times that there is a lot of friction with the people who is trying to implement this, or not implement, from people who are trying to adopt this kind of technologies. So the main thing that I will say is trying to find the MVP version of anything that you're trying to get to get into the business. It doesn't matter if you are just trying to automate the way that you receive your orders, or the just trying to have like your email sorted out or filtered in the right way. There can be several small things that can improve your business operations like really drastically, just with really small changes. And you don't need to be having, I don't know, a software that is going to cost you I don't know, like 2 or 3 grand a month just to have like everything automated, but no one in your team is going to use it. So I don't know if I'm making sense of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it made me,
And then again, maybe it's like counter sales, because I can say you have to invest several hundreds of thousands of dollars to improve this, but the real thing is there's several small things that you can do in a business trying to just digitize like the critical things that you need in order to really have a change in the business.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it made sense in the way that, and one of the reasons that I was asking this, it's because we all know about the Silicon Valley case. So a lot of money was poured in a single place where everybody thought it was going to go great, and it just didn't. So it probably had to do a lot with the fact that software is so volatile, like so ethereal, that like you can be selling something that's worth millions, and it just doesn't add the value to your business, right? So yeah, I think it makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Any more questions?
Yeah, I think that I don't have a question, but I just, as a side note, I think that will be a great other webinar to go over in a different topic that, just based on this question came to my mind. I don't know if people know in general that small businesses are the #1 target for spam and hacking. And, I think I've been thinking actually about this webinar is like later. And as Jose Miguel was talking about, investment in technology, investment in, automation, things like that. Well, this is part of technology, right? Technology security. And a lot of times small businesses don't know that there are people out there trying to get access to their website, their business bank account, their QuickBooks, and their email and their contacts and things like that, right? And the way these hackers, these people that are fishing for information, are so subtle, right? That is, I remember, I actually, even Frankie Joe has sent me sometimes some emails, like, hey, does this have to do anything with Facebook or LinkedIn or anything like that? And then when I see that, she sends me that, oh yeah, don't worry about it, it's spam, don't click on anything. She's like, okay, cool. But this is a #1. The small businesses are the #1 target of hackers, especially international hackers. And I think that will be a great session to have. Maybe you and I, Arturo, we can go back and forth on cases and best practices, things like that, because you are really familiar with cybersecurity. And when we talk about cybersecurity, it's not something like huge or big to know, like, you gotta be a technology company. But in reality, it's like, how does cybersecurity apply for your business, right? And especially if you have somebody besides yourself, helping you in your business, that they have an email account and access to different things. What is the cybersecurity information and practices they should know from you to protect your business. I think that would be another, and that's an investment. Kind of like what Jose Miguel was talking about. That's an investment to make on your business, because things can happen where you can get locked out of your business, and then you lose your contacts, you lose this and that. So yeah, awesome. This is still the Q&A. We're at the end of the session. If anybody has any other questions that you might want to share with us, right now is the time to either unmute yourself or post it on the chat. I think one of the other aspects, Arturo, of doing international business is the opportunities that somehow people, I think, wouldn't know to develop. I think in general, sometimes and I put myself in the bucket because I used to think like this, right? Many times we think about like, well, doing business with Mexico, we always think about always like equal, cheaper labor, right? But in reality, like we don't, and I put myself in those shoes, right? I'm not saying it's everybody, but I think a lot of people, I don't want to say everybody, but a lot of people think about, well, how would I make more money if I do business with Mexico? And the reality is like, there's a huge amount of opportunity to do business with Mexico, regardless of your business. I don't have the answer to everything, but I can just tell you from our own experiences, right? That there's so many other big businesses and companies and business leaders connecting with the state of Arizona, and even like looking to do business over here, right? Like from the top of my head, I can think of like, insurance companies can benefit from this, or insurance agents, or lawyers, or accountants and stuff like there's a lot of people from Sonora, right? And that's just one state. Like there's many other states looking to do, just like yourself, right? Looking to do business here in the state of Arizona because of the proximity to the border, right? But they don't have a direction, they don't have, or they're searching on Google. Like you said, you got to have your website bilingual. And I think that's something that if you are in an industry that can benefit from international clients, right? That might be either looking to, not necessarily to do business over there, but like, hey, if they want to do business here, right?
Yep.
Then if they don't find you, how are you going to take advantage of those customers, right? And you and I, we have talked about this before, where there's a ton of people looking to go through the same steps as you went through, you're still going, right? How to form a company, how to do this, how to connect with an accountant, understanding the accounting guidelines and the IRS guidelines over here in the US and things like that. So
yeah, understanding the main differences between doing businesses from one country to another. Just an example, when I incorporated the business in the US, I think that I got my LLC in 1 or 2 weeks, something like that. But when I incorporated here in Mexico, I went through a process of almost 3 or 4 months to get in my legal instance here in Mexico. And also like small things as creating a bank account. I remembered when I first opened my bank account in the US, I spoke with the manager of the branch, and he told me, you know what, because you are not a US citizen, it's going to take a lot of time. And when he said that, I thought of months of work that we'll have to go and a lot of paperwork. And he told me it's going to take like 2 hours. And I was like, but that's not a lot of time. And he told me, well, if you want to open a bank account, then you have like all the paperwork and you are a US citizen, you can do it like in 10 minutes. So 2 hours is a lot of time. And when I went to the process again of creating a bank account here in Mexico, I think that I spent like, again, 3 or 4 months just to get in my bank account here. So there are several things. Obviously, the US is more business friendly than Mexico. But once you have things figured out here also in Mexico, it can be like beneficial for both sides.
Yeah. Awesome. So it looks like we don't have any questions coming to the chat anymore. Arturo, I want to thank you for your time. I know you're a really busy person, and I think this is valuable for anybody looking to expand their business internationally, or taking advantage, right, of the international customers that come over here. And so Here's another question. It says, I'm looking to start a business with US-based companies that need services. I really have a shelter with proper equipment. I already have contacts to do the hiring process. I already have my finance tracker. What would I like to know? What I would like to know is what is the best way to approach these customers and where to find them. I would say the internet, right? Like, when you say companies, obviously there's so many different kinds of companies, Carlos. And so maybe if you define first, right, what kind of companies, right? Like, is it a company in like the auto industry, or is it a company in the service industry and things like that, right? So they start searching, there's multiple ways we can do this, right? So I'm just going first, like, then they start searching those kind of companies over here. The other one that it might be a little bit more labor intensive is, like Arturo was saying, is, connecting with those organizations to see who the other members in other companies are. And because many times, even with us, with the East Valley Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, if you join us and you become a member, you connect with us, and we always ask, how can we help you, right? And so we start learning, what you're about, what things that you need help with. And we don't have the answers all the time, but we can, like I said, we can see, we can connect it with this person, right? Or you should reach out to these contacts, or you should try to do this, right? Some kind of guidance. And so that will be the best way to, or one of the ways to start finding leads or finding ways to connect with the specific companies that you will want to work with. In your case, joining a bunch of organizations here locally in Arizona, if you can, or if you're gonna do more US based, I know for a fact, like, there's a lot of people that go on the internet and search, nearshoring from Mexico, or, international call center services, things like that, right? Like, going back to the website, make sure your website is present, it's available, it's SEO optimized for those keywords, so that if they're searching for you, for that you can offer, you can also be found. Any comments on that, Arturo? Just to close.
No, I think you covered most of the things, and obviously, again, if I had to go through that again, I think that will be the right path to go. When I mean that is trying to join like international chambers. For example, the first big customer that we got also internationally was through the Global Chamber of Commerce. So it really depends on the business and the industry that you are. But if you're just trying to offer services, I think like references or referrals is the best way to go, and the best way to connect with people through achieve that is through this kind of organizations. And also Jorge says, if we know when the next commissions are, I don't know the exact dates, but I know for sure that they are publishing the dates in their Facebook or on the website. So I just encourage you to search for the Arizona Mexico Commission, and you can find their website, or you can find their Facebook page, and they're gonna have the information there.